Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Weekly MTG. It is the debut for Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. I have two fantastic guests with me today. I have a Corey Bowen from the Magic side, and we have a special guest, Brandy Camel from the D&D team. Corey, why don't you tell the folks at home a little bit about what you do on Magic?
Hello, I'm Corey Bowen, as previously introduced. So I'm a game designer in Magic the Gathering. I help make Magic cards. I mostly work with Commander sets, and I've made a lot of Commander pre-constructed decks you've seen in the past couple of years. For Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate, I was the lead set designer for this set. So this was my first big draft set lead, and it was a huge project for me. So I'm very excited for everyone to see it.
Yeah, we're excited to talk about it. Brandy, you're our D&D expert, but what do you do on a daily basis?
Absolutely. So I'm Brandy Camel. I am the community lead for Dungeons & Dragons. So I do a lot of the same kinds of things that the community managers do for Magic the Gathering. Things like getting resources together for designers, passing on feedback. I handle the Dungeons & Dragons Discord, and I do lots of behind-the-scenes planning for content plans and things like that. That's boring marketing side of what I do.
But what you're here for today is to be our sort of D&D translator and sort of let us know the cool story behind a lot of who these characters are, where these places are. And let's start with the name of the set, because it's Battle for Baldur's Gate, but that's not a place that Magic fans are going to necessarily be familiar with. So, Brandy, tell us, what is Baldur's Gate?
So Baldur's Gate is one of the larger metropolitan cities in what is called the Forgotten Realms, which is one of our most well-known settings in Dungeons & Dragons. Has been around for 40-ish years or something to that degree. You might be familiar with Baldur's Gate from the series of games that came out in the 90s. There's Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, we have Baldur's Gate 3 coming on the horizon. And it's a massive city. There's lots of kind of political intrigue. It's run by a series of 4 nobles. There's like the upper city and the lower city, and there's just a lot to explore in Baldur's Gate.
All right. So, Corey, how does this set, I mean, obviously there's the Commander Legends portion of it, which is drafting Commander, which is really cool, but it's set in Baldur's Gate. How does the set try to capture the feel of what Brandy was just talking about?
Right, so this idea of a Commander Legends, Commander Draft format actually plays really into some of these themes Brandy was touching upon. You know, Baldur's Gate, it's a very political atmosphere. There's a huge political divides. There's people always trying to make alliances for political reasons, betray each other. You know, there's an undercity to explore. But a lot of the Baldur's Gate, you know, stratosphere and adventure is around this kind of political intrigue. And so with Commander, it's a multiplayer game, and so you are playing Magic with other players, and there's a lot of times during your draft or during your game where you're trying to make deals with people or make alliances or, you know, betray other people, much like an average Baldur's Gate citizen. And in that sense, those two marry very well together in the multiplayer format of Baldur's Gate. And so while we're making the set, we're just trying to keep that kind of feeling of, you know, political tomfoolery pretty high.
All right. Well, let's talk about some of the mechanics that you use to paint this set. So we've got a couple new ones. The first one is called Background. So you're going to see background on some legends and some enchantments. So let's take a look at our first preview card, Volo Iterant Scholar. So we met Volo last time we were in D&D World for Magic. This is a little bit different. This is a 2/3 legendary creature human wizard for 2 and a blue. When Volo enters the battlefield, create Volo's Journal, a legendary creature artifact token with hexproof, and when you cast a creature spell, note one of its creature types that hasn't been noted for the artifact. So he's just jotting down creatures. And then you can draw a card for each creature type noted for target permanent you control named Volo's Journal. Also notice there, the rulebook frame is returning. So we talked about that with the pre-beat, but we'll see a bunch of rulebook frame cards in here. But the thing we want to focus on right now is that line of text at the bottom that says, choose a background. And so let's take a look at 2 backgrounds, and then we'll have Corey tell us what all of this means. So Noble Heritage is a legendary enchantment background, a new subtype. That's 1 and a white, And it says commander creatures you own have, when this creature enters the battlefield and at the beginning of your upkeep, each player may put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature they control. For each opponent who does, you gain protection from that player until your next turn. Criminal Past is an enchantment for 2 and a black, and it says commander creatures you own have menace, and this creature gets +X/+0, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. All right, Corey, what's going on here with background?
So there's a lot going on with backgrounds. You know, we just saw Volo has a bunch of text, has choose a background, and all these backgrounds, and essentially what these are, it's a partner-like mechanic where if I have a legendary creature that can choose a background, and that card is my commander, then I can also have a legendary enchantment that is a background as my commander as well. So these enchantments can be your commander or in the command zone, rather, if your commander has choose a background. And functionally, they'll function very similar to partner, where you can cast them from the command zone whenever you want. And as they are removed and go back to the command zone, you'll have to pay 2 for every other time you played your background. All of the backgrounds have this kind of grafting text where they give an ability to your commander. Flavorfully, you know, backgrounds are a mechanic in Dungeons and Dragons. When you're making your character, you choose your, you know, your race, your class, and also your background. So it's a way of, you know, telling your friends what your story is, who you are as a character. And in a commander draft set, while you're drafting legendary creatures, it's a way to bring that kind of character customization feel from Dungeons and Dragons into Commander, where I'm Volo, and you know, this game or this draft, I'm Volo with a criminal past. You know, that's my D&D characters. I'm this bardic wizard with a criminal past, or maybe I'm noble Volo this time. I've decided that I'm noble Volo, so I have this nobility kind of ability, or maybe I'm a criminal or whatever. And there's tons of different combinations to choose, tons of different whimsical backgrounds, many of them based around real backgrounds in Dungeons and Dragons, and many of them based off of other whimsical stuff or Baldur's Gate factions.
All right. And so, like partner, do these enchantments help define what colors your deck can be?
Right. So there was so much going on, I forgot to mention. Partners served a very important role in the first Commander Legends, which helped the draft kind of work, is that there was a bunch of monocolor partners where you could, you know, draft them and build a 2-color deck with 2 partners, and it helped you flexible in your draft. If you had a red partner, you could still be open to red-black or red-green. Turns out that's very important in a commander draft format, to have that flexibility, to not be so rigid in your color identity. And so backgrounds, much like partners, define your color identity, and a lot of their function in a set in the first place is to help us stay flexible, but kind of bring a new definition of a partner-like mechanic or 2 objects in your command zone. So it's a little bit of a different feel, and it feels a lot more like creating your character, which I really, really enjoy.
All right. Let's move on to the next new mechanic of 2 new mechanics. So this one is called Initiative. And we see Initiative on another preview card, White Plume Adventurer, here in both the main and extended versions. And you'll notice it says, when it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative, and then it's got some rider text. If you've completed a dungeon, untap all creatures you control instead of just untapping a single creature. And then to know what the initiative does, we've got a little Dungeon and a Helper card here. So when you take the initiative, you venture into the Undercity. So you venture into a specific dungeon, this dungeon here. So Corey, what's going on with Initiative?
Right, so Dungeons and Dragons, the first word we say is dungeons. Adventures in the Forgotten Realms have introduced this dungeon mechanic. And we wanted to play off of the dungeon mechanic in kind of a new, fresh way that maybe was a little bit more multiplayer orientated. Similarly, there's a very beloved mechanic in Commander called Monarch that works similarly to the Initiative, where there's this helper card that kind of moves around as you deal combat damage to people and provides value for everyone. And very early in the set design and vision design, we thought to ourselves, hey, you know, Monarch dungeon, like a Monarch dungeon thing. I have a Monarch, but it ventures me into a dungeon. What does that mean? And this is kind of where we ended up. And it's really cool. It's the initiative. You hit people. You venture into the Undercity, which is, you know, this sprawling dungeon underneath Baldur's Gate itself. It adds a lot of value stuff. It works with your old dungeon cards in a very interesting way. But in this draft format, you know, you're really focused on taking initiative, venturing throughout the Undercity, having a commander-scaled dungeon in some sense, and it's a lot of fun.
All right. The next mechanic we're going to talk about isn't so much a mechanic as it is sort of a card subtype that has a mechanical identity to it. The return of gates, which just makes sense. And it makes sense because this card right here, Baldur's Gate, is a legendary land gate. And Corey, before you talk about this card and why this set has a Baldur's Gate in it, I have to point out the flavor text on this, which is just fantastic. Of course I know what eponymous means. It's a little horse. Here's the gate guard. That flavor text works on so many levels, and I love it so much. Anyway, okay. Baldur's Gate, this is very on the nose, Corey. Why are gates returning? What role do they play in this set?
Right, well, obviously, Baldur's Gate. What's the second word? It's gates. You know, there's actually 9 gates in Baldur's Gate separating the different districts and the different levels of the city. And in this set, it's more of a lighter archetype. There's no like color pair that's associated towards it, but you know, there are 9 gates in this set representing the 9 gates in Baldur's Gate. Some of the commons are kind of the pivotal land fixing that you have in your booster packs to help your commander decks get some lands that and some mana fixing that makes sense. And then there's some commons and an uncommon and this rare that all scale off of the gates you control. So a lot of your gate rewards are actually gates themselves, like this Baldur's Gate that gives you mana scaled on your gates. There'll be a few other cards in the set that care about gates as well, but we thought it was a really delightful little light touch synergy mechanic that it's really fun to draft. You know, when you're picking your fixing, you're suddenly open to this fun little gate matter stuff. And you know, there may or may not be a legend in the set as well that also cares about gates in kind of a fun way. Also, quick note about the little horse flavor text. I believe in Baldur's Gate there's actually like a size limit to how big animals can be in the city, so it makes sense that they only know what little horses are.
It's yet another level on that flavor text. I love it. All right, real quick, we're going to kind of run through. So when you're drafting this set, the different colors have different themes. They have different ways they interact with each other. So we're going to talk real quick about each of the colors and sort of their identity in the set. Let's start with white. Let's take a look at some of the commons and uncommons from the set. So Corey, what is white trying to do in this set?
Yeah, so a lot of White's gameplay is kind of focused around tokens in some sense, and going wide. So White likes generating tokens. White likes things leaving the battlefield, so some more sacrificing token synergies works really well. White likes attacking each of your opponents, which going wide also helps out. And that's a lot of what these cards you see. Lulu, our lovely little Holophant down there, gives you a bonus if something left your battlefield this turn. Which there will be tokens that do leave the battlefield quite well. Ellen cares about tokens entering the battlefield, and you know, tokens definitely enter the battlefield in this set. So there's all these little synergies that help White sing and kind of link up with each other. There's also entering the battlefield and some ETB blink stuff. There's a little bit of that in the set as well, as you can see with kind of Abdel Adrian down there.
All right. Well, let's take a look at blue. Again, some more commons and uncommons. What's blue up to this set?
Right, so blue is a lot of different things. Blue is about saboteuring, you know, kind of the blue-black archetype is more initiative focused, which really helps if you're evasive and you can attack people. Blue also has some blinking stuff going on. There's a little bit of adventuring, and a little bit of, not shown here, but there's some dragon themes in blue as well. So blue's got a lot going on, but a lot of it can be focused on, hey, flying creatures, pretty good when I can hit my opponents, and also play large flying creatures that happen to have the dragon type.
All right, let's take a look at black.
I definitely see where that's going. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
What's black up to, Corey?
Right. So black is doing a lot of standard black things. With blue, it does care about some initiative stuff as well, but there's a lot of graveyard synergy, sacrifice synergy, some stuff you kind of expect to see from black. Baldur's Gate, I think, is in general a very black aligned city. There's a lot of cutthroat, there's a lot of undead, there's a lot of just very nasty, evil things going on, and so all these black cards kind of feel at home here.
All right, and then red.
Yeah, so a lot of red is kind of focused around, the dragons in Dungeons and Dragons, but also, like we said earlier, attacking each opponent. Um, yeah, I mean, it's mostly the dragons attacking opponents, getting treasure. There's some goading cards in this set as well, although it's not particularly a theme, but it's a very fun thing to do in multiplayer games.
All right, and then green.
Right. Well, this is a commander set, so green likes going a little big. There's some ramp going on to get to our giant, tasty, awesome dragons. There's 2 dragons here that you can look at and think that they're very cool, because I do think that they are very cool. They're also making tokens in green here. As you can see, Halcyon and Cloakwood Hermits are both cards that either synergize or create tokens. Love that rulebook frame of Halcyon art. That's a very cute little baby bear.
It's adorable.
Yeah.
All right, and then let's take a look at some gold cards. So what role are the gold cards playing in this set?
Right. So the structure of this set is pretty similar to Commander Legends. The first Commander Legends, in terms of the gold cards, there's going to be 10 uncommon 2-color legends that kind of tell you kind of what the more structured theme of the limited archetypes are doing. You can see here Commander Liara Porter. She's about attacking each opponent. That's kind of the idea there. You can see OG here is about blinking creatures for ETB effects with some second spell synergy to work with adventures. So that's kind of the theme with OG. And then Rissla Rail is very hard on taking the initiative, completing a dungeon, and then buffing your saboteur creatures, essentially. So a lot of the uncommons are going to be kind of that aligned. We'll also have rare gold legends that are going to be more of the sidestep stuff to do in this set that, maybe if it's your 4th or 5th or nth draft or whatever, and you are bored of the limited archetypes, there's a lot to do, a lot of unique commanders, and a lot of the rare gold cards are going to let you do some kind of wackier stuff.
All right. And then finally, in our trip through the colors, the non-color cards. So we're going to talk more about some artifacts under You Find Some Treasure. But yeah, you'll see some of the artifacts that are in store for this set here. But I want to move on to my favorite part of all we're talking about today is you meet a legend. This set is absolutely packed with legendary characters from the world of D&D. So we're going to play a little game. We're going to show a card. It's going to be a legendary character. Brandy, you are going to tell us who that legendary character is. Give us their backstory a little bit. And then Corey's going to tell us how that character was translated to the card you're going to see in front of us. And we're going to start with a card that so many people asked for after Adventures in the Forgotten Realms that I've lost track, as Elminster, a planeswalker who can be your commander. Brandy, who is Elminster and why were people asking for him so much?
So Elminster's kind of a big deal. He is kind of, if you want to draw an analogy to another big IP out there, he is the Forgotten Realms version of Gandalf in a way. He is the most powerful wizard. He's the one people go to for guidance, and he's also the one who kind of like sneaks around behind the scenes oftentimes to nudge things in the right direction. And I think the reason that people were probably asking so much for Elminster is that Elminster is like the core centralized character written by Ed Greenwood, who is the creator of the Forgotten Realms. So that's most likely why they felt he was missing from the set that introduced the Forgotten Realms, is that, he's sort of seen as the grandfather of that world. So I think people are going to be really excited to see him in this set.
All right, and Corey, obviously this is a big deal. This is a planeswalker who can be your commander. So how did you translate Elminster to the set?
Yeah, there are so many things you could do with Elminster. He's one of those characters that just has a huge ability suite, and is a very powerful wizard with many feats, many steps. So we're kind of honing down somewhere and saying, okay, what does a very powerful wizard do? And we ended up on this mixture of instants and sorcery mattering, which feels very native to wizards, and we actually ended up going with somewhat of a scry theme with Elminster. We thought that a blue-white scry commander that was Planeswalker felt like a very interesting space. It kind of fits someone who kind of is all-knowing in some sense, or you know, has such a broad definition of what their knowledge is. You know, Elminster, he can know so much, see so much, obviously. So scrying kind of fit well, and making your bigger instant sorceries cost less. We liked giving you some motivation to have bigger instants and sorceries to feel like a more powerful wizard. So that static's going to be really good casting your big instants and sorceries, and that -3 is going to be really beneficial if you got a large spell on top of your library.
All right, next up, Brandy. Who is Myrkul, Lord of Bones? It's got that legendary creature god type line in there.
Absolutely, and Myrkul is exactly that. Myrkul is one of the more maligned deities in the Forgotten Realms, associated kind of with death largely, and necromancy. So you'll find Myrkul iconography in, you know, kind of the vile crypts that you stumble into on the realms, or among cultists that you might battle. So I definitely like Black's dead on for Myrkul for sure.
All right, Corey?
Yeah, so Myrkul is one of the trio affectionately called the Dead Three, or such and such, one of the 3 dead gods. So in Magic, we have, you know, we've made a lot of gods before, and some of those gods were indestructible if you had, or under certain restriction or condition. And so with Myrkul being a dead god, we thought it would be cool if he was indestructible, like gods are, under some sort of you know, harmful restriction to use. So we have him being indestructible as long as your like total is half or less. So you really have to be you know, devoted to a dead god to receive its godly benefits. And this other ability, when your creatures die, they come back as enchantments. So if you have a creature with a really cool static ability, or a enters the battlefield ability and it dies, it'll come back and its corpse will kind of be hanging around. It can't attack, it can't block, but you know, it's still doing its thing because it's dead and it is never dying, just like Myrkul.
All right, next up, let's meet Lejean, Cultist of Tiamat. Brandy, who's this?
So I actually don't know, and I think that's because this might be one of the characters that was created for this set.
Corey, is that the case?
Yeah, so this is Lejean. This is a Dragonborn in Baldur's Gate. Dragonborn are not super new, but you know, in D&D's history, they're kind of, you know, appearing more in the latter half of D&D's, the more recent half of D&D's history. And a lot of the Baldur's Gate media and Baldur's Gate games were developed before Dragonborn, so there's not a lot of notable Dragonborn legends that we could bring into the set. But we really wanted to have a dragon theme. Dragons are really cool. They're very cool for Commander. They're very cool for D&D, and we wanted to have large dragons and Dragonborn characters show up. So we fabricated some new characters, some Dragonborn showing up in Baldur's Gate, and you know, the Cult of Tiamat is, you know, a very classic D&D 5e faction or group that hangs out in the Forgotten Realms. So it felt pretty natural to have Lejean hang out here.
All right, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that our next card is also one of those made-up characters. Lejean, Dragon's Legacy, is that right?
Yeah, I believe so. I think this
it's not a name I recognize.
Right. I mean, I can give you a little fun fact that I believe this was trying to be I don't know if this ended up being that or not, but we were thinking about this card as a psionic sorcerer from the 5e, like, psionic subclass rules. I don't know if that's made it all the way to the end, but certainly it was being playtested a lot as Aberrant Mind.
Yes, Aberrant Mind did in fact make it in. I believe it's in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
Perfect.
All right. Well, our next preview card, Brandy, I believe we're back to these being characters that we've met before in D&D.
Yes.
Lae'zel, am I pronouncing that right?
Lae'zel.
Lae'zel.
Yeah.
And who is a Lae'zel and what is a GIF?
Okay, there's a lot
Oh
to
my
explain
gosh.
here. So,
Big question. What is a GIF is a big
yeah,
question.
very, very big question. So the Gith are a powerful warrior race that is found among the astral planes, which is one of the more like star-like interplanetary sort of planes of existence. And Lae'zel is actually one of the companions you'll meet in Baldur's Gate 3. You can meet up with her pretty much immediately in the early access that's available. And she is a very powerful warrior, and often, if you don't use her as a tank, you probably steal her armor because it's awesome. So,
All right, Corey, how does that translate to magic?
Right. So Lae'zel, again, one of the companions in Baldur's Gate 3, they get and their whole astral sea conflict comes very much into play in the first thing you do in Baldur's Gate 3, which is crash on your giant Nautilus starship. Anyhow, Lae'zel is a warrior, and so the kind of counters that you're going to be putting on your creatures in this set are mostly +1/+1 counters. Now, you notice when we talk about some of the mechanics, that's not really a main draft archetype theme, but this is a rare legend, and so there are cards in this set that put +1/+1 counters on your stuff. And as a rare legend, this kind of gives you a chance to do something a little bit outside the norm for the draft archetypes and draft in a way that's a little bit against the grain for the standard archetypes. And Lae'zel, being a warrior, +1/+1 counters make your creatures attack and block better, and so she makes those enhancements and buffs a little stronger as well.
All right, next up we have a very interesting card called the Faceless One. Brandy, give us a little background on this legendary enchantment creature background.
So this is very much a reference to a specific background that was provided in Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. And in that particular adventure, it's not really a spoiler at this point because it happens in like the first session of the game will probably start this way. But a portion of Baldur's Gate falls into the first layer of hell. And that kind of kicks off all of these events that happen. And so Faceless One's one of the backgrounds that you can have because there are not only are there kind of unscrupulous types of people who inhabit Baldur's Gate, but you might have good reason to want to disguise yourself or take on the persona of somebody else when you find yourself on the first layer of hell.
All right, and Corey, what's going on with this card in the set? It looks a little wild.
Well, there's a lot going on. So yes, this is a background. Also says choose a background. This is a creature, enchantments, background. It's a lot going on. So in our first Commander Legends, we had a card called the Prismatic Piper that was a partner that you could choose its color identity. And the purpose of that card is that if I drafted just one partner or no partners and I needed a commander for my draft deck, I would have that. Well, in this set, we're trying to get a choose a background legend and a background enchantment. There's kind of two pieces to the puzzle I need to have in order to have a commander for draft. And there was still some need to have something that was like the Prismatic Piper that was this backup commander that I could use, if I wasn't able to draft anything that made sense. So the Faceless One is both of those halves in one card. If I don't have, if I did not draft a legendary creature or a background, I could have the Faceless One. This is my commander. This is the representation of an alternate persona. And my background is the Faceless One. It's the representation of an alternate persona. So it kind of works as a creature and a background enchantment in that kind of way. And I think flavorfully, this background from Baldur's Gate worked well, because if I have a creature and I forgot to draft its background, then its background is this alternate persona, and that's represented by a creature on the battlefield, which I think is interesting. Or, my Faceless One is my commander, and I choose the background for its alternate persona. So kind of different flavor links worked really well, but mostly this is just going to be a backup commander card for your commander draft. I don't think you'll be needing it too often, but the art is really, really sweet.
Yeah, it definitely is. All right, let's go lightning round, because we've got a bunch more legends to get through. I kid you not, people at home watching this, we have so many cards to preview. Brandy, who is Baba Lysaga?
Oh, Baba Lysaga is amazing. So she's kind of our universe's equivalent of Baba Yaga, the witch from myth, and she's associated with the Fae and kind of like living in swamps. I think she shows up in Curse of Strahd, which is one of our darker kind of horror-inspired adventure paths. So that's where she kind of comes from. She's really cool. And she's also responsible for training a young Tasha, who might have been mentioned in the first set, along with her hideous laughter.
Corey, how does card may get into Magic?
Yeah, so I love the Bop of the Saga concepts. You know, I play a fair amount of D&D in my time, and we definitely faced off against this. And this kind of concept is more or less top-down, which, you know, the idea of sacrificing permanents of different types is kind of my idea of like throwing different ingredients in a cauldron, a witch's cauldron, to get a gnarly output. And so that's kind of where this card is going.
All right. Next up, Raphael, Fiendish Savior. Who is this, Brandy?
Raphael is another reference to Baldur's Gate 3. I believe he is the mysterious benefactor who is responsible for Astarian's affliction, we'll say. It's a little bit of a story beat that kind of winds out a little bit later. I won't get too far into spoiling it, but he is a noble that resides within Baldur's Gate, and he is very fiendish in nature. So,
all right. Next up is Gorian, Wise Mentor. Who is Gorian?
So I will correct you. Gorian.
Gorian.
Gorian, yes. So Gorian is your benefactor in the very first Baldur's Gate game. He is the one who found you as an orphan. So the character that you make is raised by Gorian in a place called Candlekeep, which is very close to Baldur's Gate. It's just like, I think it's 40 miles south or something like that on the coast. So Gorian was a sort of a powerful sage character who rescued you, very knowledgeable, took you to a place of knowledge, helped raise you, and then sadly passes away, saving you as you start off on your adventure.
Oh, and so Corey,
Yes.
how does that translate into adventures? Yeah.
Right, so Gorian, whose name I have definitely been pronouncing correctly this whole time, this is an Adventure Matters commander. So Adventure is returning for this set because it feels very D&D, and so the idea here is that, you know, in the Baldur's Gate games, Gorian is your mentor, and he's kind of what kicks you off on your whole quest in general. And so we thought, you know, he kind of pushes you off into your adventure. It'd be really fun to have, like, this is Gorian. He helps you adventure. Like, he has told you to go adventuring, or he is the impetus for all of your adventuring. And so that's the direction we took with him.
Great. All right, next up we have Mazzy, True Sword Paladin. Who is Mazzy, Brandy?
So Mazzy isn't a specific lore character that I'm aware of, but she's a halfling and a knight, and that's actually a really great kind of, in D&D terms, she'd probably be a paladin, probably a Lightfoot halfling if I had to imagine. And that's actually a really great pairing. Halflings are known for their bravery and kind of their charismatic nature, so they make pretty good paladins.
All right, Court, was this one made up for this set?
So this was not made up. There are many legendary creatures here that are going to be callbacks to old companions from the original Baldur's Gate games. I spent a lot of time.
Maybe I just never found her.
Well, there's a lot of companions. There's a lot of games. There's a lot of content, and there's some DLC as well. And so Mazzy is just, some fun little halfling paladin that we really liked, and we decided to build a card that was centered around auras. So there's a handful of auras in this set to work well with, and we thought auras kind of resonated with the paladin archetype pretty well.
All right, you stumped Brandy. I didn't think that was possible.
You did.
All right, next up is Gale, Waterdeep Prodigy. Who is Gale, Brandy?
Gale is another companion that shows up in Baldur's Gate 3. He is a wizard companion who you stumble onto right away. He was, I believe, also on the ship with you. Kind of stumbles out of it. And he's got an interesting affliction as well. He has a compulsion to eat magic items. And something very bad will happen if he doesn't eat magic items. So you kind of have to keep him fed.
All right, Corey?
Yeah, well, I'll keep the spoilers light. So we mostly, looked at Gale as Hotshot Wizard Man from Baldur's Gate 3, and Hotshot he is. He's very good at casting some sorceries, very wizardy. We were tinkering with designs that, references affliction and, his eventual consequences from that, but we kind of ended up on something that was a little less explosive.
All right. Next character is one Brandy mentioned earlier, Astarian the Decadent. Who is this?
Astarian the Decadent. So he is another companion for Baldur's Gate 3. His affliction, as you might be fairly obvious from the card, is he's a vampire. And he is an individual who's kind of been operating in that place between being rising to nobility, but hasn't quite made it there yet. And so he's kind of under the thumb of Raphael. And is not super happy about it, but he's an awesome rogue in the party. I know he's very popular as a companion and super powerful to have in your group.
All right, Corey.
Yeah, well, and again, another Baldur's Gate 3 companion. We really tried to get as much as we could into the sets. Classic vampire, but maybe doesn't want to be a vampire character. AFR, the first D&D set, had a lot of these kind of choose one spells that had kind of these fun spells that had kind of these flavorful choices. And with Astarion, we thought we'd go a similar direction where we kind of, amplified his struggle as an afflicted vampire, which is, do I choose to eat these people or become friends with them?
Next up, we've got Dinah here, Invoker Adept. Brandy, who is Dinah here?
So Dinah here, if I remember correctly, was the companion that you have to go save in Baldur's Gate 1 with Minsk specifically. So I believe Minsk is sworn to protect Dinah here. And so she is, a powerful sorceress, wizard represented here, that is under Minsk's observation and guardianship in a way.
All right, Corey.
Great. Tinny here is Minsk's friend. We're big Minsk fans in this company.
Yeah, we are.
Also Boo fans. Don't want to leave out the Star Wars show. Dinny here. So in Magic specifically, there was an old cycle of cards called Invokers, which were these cards with large activated abilities that cost a ton of mana. And so Dinny here, class-wise, in the video games, is referred to as an Invoker. And I don't know, we kind of just ran with that, and we made Dinny here the Invoker care about big activated abilities. There's also a cycle of Invokers in this set as well, as you may have seen a few of them earlier when we were looking at some of those monocolor cards.
Yep, absolutely. All right, our final legendary character that we're going to meet, final-ish, is another god, Baal, the Lord of Murder, Brandy?
So I think it's Baal.
Baal, okay.
It might be Baal. There are legitimately two gods. One is Baal and one is Bhaal.
That's not confusing at all.
Up a lot. No, not at all. Different universes colliding and whatnot. But you'll definitely recognize the iconography of Baal if you've played the Baldur's Gate games, because it's literally the logo. That skull with those blood drops around it is the iconography of Baal. And Lord of Murder is also kind of he's a very key figure in the Baldur's Gate games, because a lot of the events that are happening are all part of his machinations. He was a dead god. He's coming back. Some of the things that happen in those games, I mean, I can probably spoil a 20-year-old video game at this point, but
I think you're fine. I think you're fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm fine. But he has multiple god children out in the world. Baal spawn is what they're called, and your character in Baldur's Gate 1 is actually one of them. So it's sort of the mystery that unravels and winds up by the end of it.
All right, Corey, that's a lot. How does it translate to this card?
Right. Baal, which is another name I definitely have been pronouncing the correct way, is huge antagonist in the Baldur's Gate story. And almost every Baldur's Gate story, Baal is behind the scenes. He is obviously the second of the three dead gods that we see here. As Brandy referenced, there's a bunch of Baal spawn running around, which are kind of his children in some sense, or his reincarnations, or some confusing version of that. And Bale's whole plan is that they all fight each other and kill each other, and then they will release his essence, and then he will come back from the dead. And so Bale just really wants to incite a lot of violence, a lot of murder. So here he is goading things to try to incite violence and murder. Lord of Murder, you can't go without any violence, I think. He also has this indestructible line that we saw on Merkel, as well as kind of a through line for an expression of being a dead god.
All right. And we've talked about a lot of legends so far, but we've only seen a couple backgrounds, so I thought we'd leave you with a couple backgrounds that some of these characters could have. For example, they could be raised by giants. That's a thing that could happen. I want to also point out here, we only saw it on one of the backgrounds we showed earlier, but they all have this sort of same flavor text written in the second person. So this one, your parents taught you that strength can be nurtured and owned no matter one's size. And then another background we can look at is Cultist of the Absolute. You embrace power at any cost, and if it consumes you, so be it. Is the cult of the Absolute, Brandy, is that a D&D cult?
Yeah, so this also comes up in Baldur's Gate 3. The Cult of the Absolute. It's still a little bit mysterious as to what exactly it is, but we know it's related to mind flayers in some way, and that there's some kind of infliction that you have at the start of the game that is giving you these whispers of, hey, accept this power, you'll get great things out of it. And it's very much a like tempting you to go down this probably not so light path.
Yeah, Corey, it looks like this is a bit of a blessing and a curse.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of power to be had in the Cult of the Absolute, but that kind of power comes at a cost, and at the risk of spoiling anything, I'll keep it at that.
All right. The last, we'll call them group of legends that I want to show off. We're not going to spend a ton of time digesting, but the Commander face cards. So we're going to be doing previews all this week and next week for the main set, but there are 4 Commander decks that will be shared on the 30th and 31st. These are the commanders helming those decks, so you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. We've got a Horror Pirate that mills. We've got a Human Druid that creates wolves when you play cards from exile. We've got a Dragon that goads, and we've got a sort of party captain. Call it party captain. Yeah, party captain. All right. Let's move on to You Encounter a Monster. Of course, this is a Dungeons & Dragons set. There have to be monsters. And we're going to start by looking at a card that isn't a monster in and of itself, but definitely evokes one. You Look Upon the Tarrasque. So we've met the Tarrasque before in Magic. But Brandy, can you give us a little background here?
Ah, the Tarrasque. The Tarrasque is like, I don't know that you would call him a meme so much as that it is a creature of lore. There is the Tarrasque. There is a single Tarrasque. No one has defeated the Tarrasque. It is forever. And there is facing the Tarrasque pretty much means certain death. It's the kind of thing that only the highest level of parties ever even dare to dream taking upon that kind of adventure. There's actually a really fun item hidden in, I believe it's the Icewind Dale Rime of the Frost Maiden book, that is a scroll that summons the Tarrasque. It doesn't put the Tarrasque under your control, but it summons the Tarrasque. So use wisely.
So Corey, we met the Tarrasque in Adventures of the Forgotten Realm. How did this card end up in the set?
Yeah, so a lot about making some top-down D&D cards is thinking about not just what is in the material of the D&D adventures, but also what is in kind of the folklore of how people remember their funniest moments in Dungeons and Dragons. And certainly Encounters with the Tarrasque is this kind of chilling, funny, scary moment that can happen in your game. So funny that they made a scroll that summons one, which is ludicrous. So we thought it was a hilarious kind of shared experience among many groups of D&D players to make a card like this. And kind of these choose your own adventure cards, which is kind of what we call this modal card that's written like a DM is telling you what to do or what is going on. We wanted to make a few more of these. We really enjoy the gameplay and the flavor of these. So this was trying to bring that folklore level D&D shared experience to one of those cards.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next up is not so much a monster, but certainly a creature that you wouldn't want to face in battle, the Battle Angels of Tyr. The borderless art there is some of my favorite art from the set. But Brandy, who are the Battle Angels of Tyr?
So Tyr himself is a deity within the Forgotten Realms, and Tyr is kind of your penultimate angel / knight / god of righteousness sort of representation. So any kind of celestial being or deity like that has celestial servants, and so the Battle Angels of Tyr are exactly that. These are his hands of justice, who, when he needs something done in the material world, or to go and fight against the maybe the incursions from Avernus of the devils and demons pouring out of there to come into Baldur's Gate, this is who he would send to clean up the mess.
Corey, this card looks incredibly powerful. First of all, it's a white card. It says draw card. Commander community claps. So tell us a bit about this card.
Right, so Battle Angels of Tyr. You'll notice, I think this is the first time today we're going to talk about Myriad. So this has Myriad. This is an older commander mechanic. This means that when this creature attacks, for each other opponent, it creates a copy of itself attacking those opponents. So this kind of attacks everyone at once. The ability here is kind of playing fair. You're hitting, hopefully, all of your opponents, and then if someone has more lands, you're going to make something that makes mana. If someone has more life than you, you get to have some life. If someone has more cards than you, you're going to get a card. So it's kind of catching you up in any way you're down. It's playing fair. It's playing justice, and it's hitting everyone. Myriad, I like it. I think it's a very fun commander mechanic. It scales aggressive strategies pretty well, and so this is definitely not the last Myriad card you'll see.
Yeah. For our next card, I'm going to flip the script a little bit, because this set, we've been focusing heavily on D&D characters that have come to Magic. There are some reprints in this set, so we're going to flip this a little bit, and we've got Ramos Sovereign, which is an excellent multiplayer card, and also that gorgeous borderless art there. So Corey, this is a reprint from Magic. Tell us how this card ended up in the set.
Right, so Ramos Sovereign is a pretty sweet green card. It's originally printed in Battle Bond, which was a two-headed giant set. So in that set, there was a bunch of cards that cared about when other players did things, and kind of gave them the opportunity to help other players, because you would want to help your teammates in two-headed giants a lot. Well, it turns out that translates to Commander in a pretty interesting way. So Ramos Sovereign, you can pay mana to make a token of your creature. But did you know that if someone else plays something and you're friends with them, you can pay mana to double their thing as well for them? So this is a political set. There's some political stuff going on, and this is a way that you can kind of tip the scales of your opponent's battles in the favor that you choose.
All right, Brandy, so this originated in Magic, but if this came to D&D, what would it look like?
Oh, well, dryads are definitely a creature or race that you could encounter, especially in the forest or in the Feywild. There is a woods very close by to Baldur's Gate. I believe it's called the Cloakwood. You might run into a dryad there. And honestly, even the mechanic here, I think, speaks to dryads really well, because very often they'll have ownership of a place where if you as an adventurer are kind to them, they'll give you a boon in some way. But if you're not kind to them, well, then they're probably going to play some tricks on you, or maybe even worse things if you're really mean to them.
All right, let's look at our next monster. So we've talked about adventure. We showed, I think, a couple adventure cards in the commons that we were looking at earlier, but this will be the first rare adventure card we've seen, which is Illithid Harvester. So, Brandy, what is an Illithid Harvester?
Oh, I love this art because it's delightfully terrifying if you understand the context of it. Because you'll see there's this little gross bug thingy he's holding in his hand, and if you've seen the Baldur's Gate 3 or opening cinematic or the trailer that they released, you'll know exactly what it's for, and it's awful. So, Illithids, procreate by infecting others with these little creatures and put you under a disease that's called ceremorphosis. And that means you slowly shed your skin and become an illithid over time. So that's most likely what this one's up to, is he is harvesting this poor elf to become one of his kind.
That is disgusting. All right, Corey, tell us how that turned into this card.
Well, it's pretty direct. You know, you're gonna cast his adventure. You're gonna tap down a bunch of your opponent's creatures, and this will go on an adventure. And so next turn, while your opponent's creatures are still tapped, this comes in, and you can turn any number of tapped creatures into 2/2 horrors. So this is pretty directly. I'm going to, disable a bunch of creatures and then turn them into mind flayers, because that is exactly what the Illithids do, and it is the most terrifying part of Act 1 of Baldur's Gate 3 possible.
Yep.
All right, so we've encountered some monsters. We need a little break. Let's look at Jaheira's respite. So this one is a fog. It searches for some lands. First of all, this is named after a character. Who is Jaheira, Brandy?
So Jaheira is another companion from Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. She is one of the first people that Gorion leaves a note to you to go find, because her and her companion Khalid will take care of you. So they're two of the first companions you can kind of go and go on an adventure to go recruit. She's a druid, so green is very appropriate for her. And she's very kind, but she's very direct. And she does return in Baldur's Gate 2 as well, so she's a kind of a staple to the series.
All right, and Corey, tell us about this card.
Yeah, so this card is, mostly started as some bigger druidish spell, and this is trying to kind of turn the tides of a game in some way. So this is going to be a fog that also ramps you a bunch for how all out your opponent went. So much like Ink Shield or other, fogs that might scale and attacking stuff. This will help you ramp up to cast bigger stuff after telling your opponent just to chill out for a little bit.
All right, well, once you've encountered a monster, if you come out on the other end, of course, it's Dungeons & Dragons, you're going to find some treasure. So we're going to look at some of the trinkets and the not-so-trinkety sort of artifacts we have coming up in this set, as well as a land. We're going to pair these next to... we snuck the land in there because it makes sense, trust me. But let's look at the first treasure we encounter, which is Arcane Signet. And of course, this is a Commander classic, Corey.
Yeah, I mean, classic Commander staple. Mana Rock does the thing it's supposed to do. I don't know exactly what D&D magic item this is trying to represent, but I know we did try to represent D&D magic items.
I do know that there's all kinds of fun, powerful rings that you can find in D&D. The ring slot is a very kind of traditional RPG slot to fill. Arcane, I actually think there might legitimately be an item called Arcane Signet, at which point it's usually meant for wizards to help them like cast an extra spell. So even the Arcane Signet has been around for quite a while in Magic, but it's honestly it represents what an Arcane Signet might do in D&D pretty well too.
All right, and next up, not treasure, but it just goes with the Arcane Signet. Command Tower, fixing your mana. Corey, tell us. It's pretty obvious why this card's in the set, but why don't you lay it on us?
Have you ever heard of this format called Commander, Blake?
I have.
So in Commander, your commander has color identities, and this land taps for its mana. So it's just classic Commander mana, classic mana fixing. Always funny to me that this common land is stronger than every other rare land in the set. But here it is. It hangs out just like Commander Legends. We have a sweet Baldur's Gate themed command tower art.
Yeah, it looks like it's referencing Durlag's Tower, Brandy.
Yes. Yeah, that's a location in Baldur's Gate 1 that is exactly as that flavor text describes it. It is full of treasure and it is full of devious traps and really dangerous creatures. I think it was a DLC area that was added. It's totally optional. But yeah, I've died in that tower a great many times.
I feel like that describes every actual location in Baldur's Gate.
That's probably true.
Well, maybe when you're in that tower, you would find some of this treasure. Returning in this set are the diamonds, which were printed for the first time a long time ago in Magic, but make their return here. Corey, how'd the diamonds end up in the set?
Yeah, I've always been a fan of these mana rocks. They were also pretty staple to the draft format of Commander Legends 1. What's really important about the diamonds for the draft is, you know, a lot of these artifacts, we think a lot about their color identity and what decks they can go into. And there's a reason these are diamonds that are one color and not like signets that might be two colors. So these can fit in monocolor decks, but also if I draft a sky diamond, it doesn't mean I have to play blue-white. It just means I can be blue anything, as opposed to it being a colorless card or a colorless identity or being two-color identity. And so these kind of just fit really well as little mana rocks that float to the right players that need them, and were a great, great resonance thing to just represent random pieces of treasure. You're always picking up gems and whatever in D&D, so here are your gems and whatever.
Your gems and whatever. Is that accurate, Brandy?
Honestly, something I'd like to call out here that I think is really cool D&D flavor is that each of these gems reference a different deity in the Forgotten Realms. So in their flavor text. So like Kelemvor is the Lord of the Dead, so it totally makes sense that the charcoal diamond is in his realm. And Moradin is like the patron saint of dwarves. So red being over there makes a ton of sense. Lathander is the morning lord and the god of dawns and morning. So like all of these have been very well themed to represent deities that kind of have portfolios based around the colors that are represented in Magic.
Yeah, and these are also pretty special in the set. So of course we have the rulebook frames. These are gorgeous. Mm-hmm. Not much to say about them. Just stare at how
they're just
lovely
pretty. They're just pretty.
Yep, they are. And of course all of these come in foil, which I know are going to be popular with Commander players. All right, so we have two final cards to talk about, both artifacts. One's a mythic. Brandy, what the heck is a Nautiloid ship?
Okay, so this is actually super relevant in D&D right now because we just announced Spelljammer, and that's where Nautiloid ships come from. So Nautiloid ships are basically spaceships piloted by Illithids, and if that sentence doesn't terrify you, it should. So Illithids, just like the Gith, also come from the Astral Sea and come from off-world. They are otherworldly creatures, and so they use Nautiloid ships to travel from world to world to spread their Ceramorphosis, or to just, feast on the brains of unsuspecting individuals, because that's just sort of what they do. So Nautiloid ships are exactly that. They are somewhat organic, fleshy spaceships piloted by Illithids, and they are terrifying.
All right, and Corey, how do you translate all of that into this Magic card we see in front of us?
Right. Nautiloid ships, Astral Sea, spaceships, yes. But what I see is the opening scene to Baldur's Gate 3. A very, very relevant place is this Nautiloid ship, which is full of prisoners who are hoped to become Illithids by the Illithid kind. So, there's a bunch of people in here that are infected and going to succumb to the Illithid armies or such and such. And so this card exiles a player's graveyard, and then as you deal damage with it, you're going to get those cards back under your control. So you are getting your stock of warm bodies, and you're getting them on your battlefield like the Illithids do.
Very cool. All right, last card, certainly not least, Robe of the Archmagi. We've got an equipment that works especially well for shamans, warlocks, and wizards. So what is this in D&D, Brandy?
So this is a very powerful kind of artifact level, and we have artifacts in D&D as well, but it typically means for us an extremely rare magical item. And that's exactly what the Robe of the Archmagi is. It is something that is very rare. It's coveted by arcane spellcasters because it's like the signifier of I've made it as a wizard. I am the Gandalf of my world. I've got my Robe of the Archmagi. I've made it. And it just augments everything that you do as a spellcaster.
All right, Corey.
Yeah, so in Dungeons and Dragons, I believe this is only attunable by sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards specifically. So shaman is our sorcerer surrogate in Magic the Gathering. We refer to them as shamans, and so that's kind of where this equipment ability comes from. It's only usable by those arcane classes, and if you can connect with one of these 3 wizardly types, it's going to draw you as many cards as strong as your creature is.
Very cool. All right, that is it. We ran through those real fast. I'm real proud of you, Corey and Brandy. We did all that in an hour. So many cards. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Today is the first day of previews. Previews are going to be running for Commander Legends Battles of Baldur's Gate all this week and next week. This week is going to focus on the legends and characters of this set. Next week, we're going to look more at building around those characters. And then if you're interested in the pre-constructed commander decks, those will be revealed on the 30th and 31st, the week before pre-releases happen for Commander Legends Battle at Baldur's Gate. I said that whole thing, and I said it well. Thank you, Corey, and thank you, Brandy, for sharing all of your knowledge with us. And actually, if they have more knowledge, there are going to be opportunities to pick their brains coming up. We're going to have a couple opportunities to talk to them on the official Magic Discord. Will they share more insights and answer more questions coming up? In the meantime, I've been Blake. Welcome to Baldur's Gate, Magic fans. We'll see you later.